The wind carried nothing but dust and broken promises as Sophia Bennett stood at the crossroads, her white wedding dress collecting the red-brown dirt of the Texas plains. The year was 1875, and she had been waiting since dawn, clutching a small valise containing everything she owned in the world. The stagecoach that was supposed to carry her to her new life had never arrived, and neither had the man who had promised to meet her there. Sophia brushed a strand of chestnut hair from her face, squinting at the horizon where the sun began its slow descent. 5 hours she had waited, her hope diminishing with each passing minute. The letter from her would-be groom, Timothy Whitfield, had been specific. Meet at Dawson's crossing on the 15th of May, where they would be married by the traveling preacher before heading to his ranch in New Mexico territory. Now the preacher had given up and returned to the nearest town, leaving Sophia alone at the junction where 2 dusty roads met, with only a weathered wooden sign to keep her company. Her throat was parched, her fair skin turning pink under the relentless sun, and the realization that she had been abandoned was settling in her chest like a stone. "Miss, you all right?" The voice startled her from behind. Sophia turned to see a man atop a dappled gray horse, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He was coated in trail dust, his clothes worn but clean, and a Winchester rifle rested in a leather scabbard against his saddle. I am waiting for someone," she said, raising her chin slightly despite the tremor in her voice. The stranger dismounted with a fluid grace that spoke of years in the saddle. As he approached, she could see he was younger than she first thought, perhaps 25, with eyes the color of the summer sky and a strong jawline softened by a kind expression. "Been waiting a while, looks like," he observed, removing his hat and revealing hair the color of sun-bleached wheat. "Name's Caleb Morgan. Got a canteen if you're thirsty." Sophia hesitated before accepting the offered water. "Thank you. I'm Sophia Bennett. I was supposed to meet my fiancé here, but She swallowed hard. "He seems to be delayed." Caleb glanced at the crossroads, then back to the young woman in the increasingly soiled wedding dress. His eyes reflected a knowing that made Sophia's heart sink further. "Miss Bennett, I just rode in from Fort Sumner. Ain't seen another soul on the trail for 2 days." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Town's a good 10 miles east. Sun'll be down in an hour. I'd be happy to escort you there." Sophia felt tears threatening to spill. The thought of admitting that she had been jilted was almost as painful as the reality of it. She had traveled nearly 1,000 miles from her home in Virginia, responding to Timothy's advertisement seeking a bride. They had exchanged letters for 6 months, and his words had painted such a promising picture of their future together. "I cannot impose," she said stiffly, though she had nowhere else to go. Caleb shifted his weight, studying her with a gaze that seemed to see right through her brave facade. "No imposition, madam. I was heading to Clearwater anyway. It's the nearest town with a decent hotel. You can wait there more comfortably, send some telegrams if need be." The mention of telegrams sparked a faint hope. Perhaps Timothy had been delayed. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation. But deep down, Sophia knew better. "I suppose that would be sensible," she finally conceded, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded, returning to his horse. "Sundance here can carry us both. Not the most proper way to travel, but it's getting on toward evening, and these parts aren't kind to folks alone after dark." As Sophia gathered her valise, a sudden gust of wind tore the letter from her hand, Timothy's letter with his empty promises. She watched it tumble across the barren landscape until it disappeared, as if the wind itself was telling her to let go. With as much dignity as she could muster, Sophia allowed Caleb to help her onto his horse. She settled behind him, hesitantly placing her hands at his waist as they set off toward Clearwater. The rhythmic sound of hoofbeats seemed to echo the pounding of her heart. Here she was, a proper Virginia lady, riding with a stranger into an unknown future, her dreams of marriage and security scattered like dust in the western wind. Caleb kept their pace steady, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of information about the territory. His voice was deep and reassuring, and despite her circumstances, Sophia found herself drawn to its warmth. "Been out here long?" she asked, trying to distract herself from her predicament. "Born and raised in Colorado territory. Been working cattle drives since I was 16. Heading home to my family's spread near Clearwater now." He paused. "What about you, Miss Bennett? What brought you out to these parts, if you don't mind my asking?" Sophia swallowed hard. "I answered an advertisement. Mr. Whitfield Timothy was seeking a bride. He wrote that he had a successful ranch, that he needed a proper wife to help make it a home." The words tasted bitter now. "We corresponded for months. He sent money for my passage west." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Whitfield, you say? Timothy Whitfield?" Something in his tone made Sophia's heart sink further. "Yes, do you know him?" Another long pause. "Name's familiar." "There was a Whitfield, had a small place south of Fort Sumner. Heard he pulled up stakes a while back, sold his land to the Bartlett outfit." The last of Sophia's hope withered and died. "I see," she said quietly. "I'm real sorry, Miss Bennett," Caleb said, and the genuine sympathy in his voice nearly broke her composure. As they crested a small rise, the lights of Clearwater came into view, small pinpricks of warmth in the gathering dusk. Sophia felt a curious mix of relief and dread. What would she do now? Her family in Virginia had made it clear there was no returning home, not after she had chosen to seek her fortune with a man they had never met. "The Prairie Rose Hotel is clean and respectable," Caleb was saying as they entered the town's main street. "Mrs. Holloway runs it. She's stern but fair." Clearwater was larger than Sophia had expected, with several streets branching off from the main thoroughfare. Wooden buildings lined both sides, their facades advertising businesses from the general store to a barber shop. A saloon blazed with light and the sound of a tinny piano, while across the street stood a whitewashed church, its steeple pointing heavenward. Caleb brought Sundance to a halt in front of a two-story building with a freshly painted sign reading Prairie Rose Hotel. As he helped Sophia dismount, her legs nearly buckled beneath her, stiff from the ride and weak from the day's emotional turmoil, Caleb steadied her with a gentle hand. "Careful now," he murmured, concern evident in his blue eyes. Inside the hotel, a gray-haired woman looked up from her ledger, her sharp gaze taking in Sophia's disheveled appearance and wedding dress with obvious curiosity. "Mrs. Holloway," Caleb said, tipping his hat. "This is Miss Bennett. She needs a room for the night." The older woman's expression softened slightly. "Of course. That'll be 50 cents for the night, including breakfast." Sophia reached for her reticule, then froze as realization hit her. She had spent nearly all her money on the journey west, expecting to be married upon arrival. What little she had left would not sustain her for more than a day or two. She began, mortification coloring her cheeks. "Put it on my account, Mrs. Holloway," Caleb interrupted smoothly. "And please see that Miss Bennett gets a hot meal sent up." Before Sophia could protest, Mrs. Holloway was nodding and reaching for a key. "Room 4, top of the stairs on the right. Got a nice view of the street. I'll have Betsy bring up some hot water for washing up, too." "Thank you, but I cannot accept such charity," Sophia whispered to Caleb, her pride still intact despite everything. His expression was kind but firm. "It's not charity, Miss Bennett. It's common decency. You can settle accounts when you've had a chance to rest and figure things out." Mrs. Holloway led Sophia upstairs, chattering about the town and its amenities. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. Sophia thanked the older woman, who gave her a sympathetic pat on the arm before leaving. Alone at last, Sophia sank onto the bed, her composure finally crumbling. The tears she had been holding back all day flowed freely, and she buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. There was a gentle knock at the door. Wiping her eyes hastily, Sophia composed herself and opened it to find a young maid with a tray of food and a pitcher of hot water. "Mr. Morgan said to make sure you ate something, miss." the girl said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "Mr. Morgan is very kind," Sophia replied, wondering if she would see him again or if he would ride out of her life as quickly as he had ridden into it. After washing her face and hands, Sophia managed a few bites of the stew and bread. Despite her distress, exhaustion soon overtook her, and she fell into a fitful sleep still wearing her wedding dress, the symbol of her shattered dreams. Morning came with the sounds of the town awakening. Sophia rose, feeling stiff and disoriented. Her wedding dress was beyond salvaging, creased and stained from the previous day's ordeal. Reluctantly, she changed into the only other outfit she possessed, a simple blue traveling dress that had seen better days. After a breakfast of eggs and coffee in the hotel's small dining room, Sophia approached Mrs. Holloway at the front desk. "I need to find work," she said without preamble. "I have limited funds and must support myself." Mrs. Holloway studied her for a moment. "What skills do you have, Miss Bennett?" "I can read and write. I am proficient in arithmetic. I can sew and keep house," Sophia listed, feeling increasingly desperate. These accomplishments that had seemed so important in Virginia suddenly felt inadequate in the raw, practical world of the West. Mrs. Holloway tapped her pencil against the ledger. "Doc Preston's been looking for someone to help with his records and correspondence, and the schoolteacher, Miss Wallace, is leaving to get married next month. Town council will be looking for a replacement." Hope flickered in Sophia's chest. "I would be grateful for any introduction you might provide." "Mr. Morgan asked after you this morning," Mrs. Holloway added casually. "Said he'd be at his family's store if you wanted to speak with him. Morgan's Mercantile, just down the street." Sophia felt a curious flutter in her stomach at the mention of Caleb. "Thank you. I should thank him properly for his assistance yesterday." Outside, Clearwater looked more welcoming in the morning light. The main street was busy with wagons and townspeople going about their business. Sophia made her way to Morgan's Mercantile, a large establishment with wide windows displaying everything from tools to fabric. Inside, she found Caleb arranging a display of boots. He looked different today, cleaner, his blonde hair neatly combed, wearing a button-up shirt rather than the trail-worn clothes of yesterday, but his smile when he spotted her was the same, warm and genuine. "Miss Bennett," he greeted, setting aside a boot. "Hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected, thank you," she replied. "Mr. Morgan, I wanted to express my gratitude for your assistance yesterday and to assure you that I will repay the cost of the room as soon as I secure employment." Caleb waved a hand dismissively. "No rush on that account." "Have you given any thought to what you'll do now?" Before Sophia could answer, an older man emerged from the back of the store. With the same blue eyes as Caleb but with gray hair and a trim beard, it was clear this was his father. "Pop, this is Miss Sophia Bennett, the lady I mentioned," Caleb said. "Miss Bennett, my father, Henry Morgan." "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Bennett," Henry said, his handshake firm. "My son told me about your situation. Terrible business being stranded like that." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "It was an unfortunate misunderstanding, I'm sure." Henry and Caleb exchanged a glance that told her they both knew better, but they were too polite to contradict her. "Miss Bennett is looking for work, Pop," Caleb said. "She's educated, knows her figures." Henry rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "As it happens, we could use someone to help with the books and correspondence. Business has been growing since the railroad spur came through last year. If you're interested, Miss Bennett, we could discuss terms." Sophia blinked in surprise. Yes, I would be very interested, Mr. Morgan." Good. Why don't you come back tomorrow morning? We'll see how you do with the ledgers. Pays fair $30 a month to start, with room for advancement if things work out." It was less than Sophia might have earned as a governess back east, but it was a lifeline she had not expected. "Thank you, sir. I will not disappoint you." As Sophia left the store, Caleb followed her out. "I hope you don't mind that I spoke to my father about you," he said, looking suddenly uncertain. "Not at all. In fact, I'm grateful." Sophia hesitated, then added, "Why are you helping me, Mr. Morgan?" "You don't know me." Caleb's expression turned serious. Out here, people need to look out for each other, Miss Bennett. The land doesn't forgive those who face it alone. He paused. Besides, seems to me you've been dealt a poor hand. Least I can do is help you find your footing. There was something in his direct gaze that made Sophia feel both seen and protected. It was a novel sensation after months of Timothy's flowery letters that had, in retrospect, carefully revealed nothing of substance about the man. "Well, I appreciate it," she said. "And please call me Sophia." A slow smile spread across his face. "Sophia, then, and I'm Caleb to my friends." It was a start, a small comfort in this strange new world where she found herself. Over the next few weeks, Sophia settled into a routine at Morgan's Mercantile. The work was straightforward, keeping the ledgers, writing orders to suppliers, handling correspondence. Henry Morgan proved to be a fair employer, patient when she made mistakes and generous with praise when she excelled. She moved from the hotel to a small room in a boarding house run by the widow Mrs. Abernathy, who charged reasonable rates and maintained strict rules about gentlemen callers and curfews. It wasn't the life Sophia had envisioned when she left Virginia, but it had its own quiet dignity. Caleb was often at the store, dividing his time between the Mercantile and the family ranch a few miles outside town. Sophia found herself looking forward to the days when he was there, his presence bringing an energy to the place that was otherwise missing. They developed an easy friendship, sharing lunch breaks and stories of their vastly different upbringings. Caleb had never ventured east of the Mississippi, while Sophia's knowledge of ranching and the Western Territories had come entirely from books and Timothy's misleading letters. "Never understood why a man would send for a bride he'd never met," Caleb commented one afternoon as they organized a shipment of fabric. "Begging your pardon, Sophia, but seems like an important decision to make based on letters alone." Sophia smoothed a bolt of calico, considering her answer. "My prospects in Virginia were limited after the war. My father lost everything, and when he passed, my mother and I were dependent on the charity of relatives who made it clear we were a burden." She glanced up at him. Timothy's letters painted a picture of a new beginning, a place where the past didn't matter so much. Caleb nodded slowly. "The West is good for new beginnings, that's true enough. Just wish folks were more honest about what those beginnings look like. It's a hard life out here." "Yet you love it," Sophia observed. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about the ranch, about the land." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Can't imagine being anywhere else. There's a freedom here you can't find back east. Room to breathe, to build something that's truly your own." As summer progressed into fall, Sophia found herself adapting to life in Clearwater. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society, attended church on Sundays, and even accepted an invitation to dinner at the Morgan Ranch, where she met Caleb's mother, Elizabeth, and his younger sister, Ruth. The ranch was modest but prosperous, with a solid 2-story house built of local stone and timber. The land stretched for acres, dotted with cattle and bordered by distant mountains. Standing on the porch after dinner, Sophia could see why Caleb loved it so. "It's beautiful," she said as he joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Been in the family since my grandfather came west in '45, Caleb explained. "Pop expanded it when he married Ma. I've been adding to the herd each year." He glanced at her. "Do you miss Virginia?" Sophia considered the question. "I miss what it was before the war sometimes. The certainty of that life, knowing exactly what was expected." She took a sip of coffee. "But that world doesn't exist anymore, not really, and there's something honest about this place that I've come to appreciate." Caleb nodded, understanding in his eyes. They stood in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was Ruth who finally asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Will you stay in Clearwater, Sophia, after what happened with your intended, I mean?" Ruth. Elizabeth admonished, but Sophia just smiled. "I believe I will," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I have employment, a place to live, and I've made friends here." Her eyes met Caleb's briefly before she looked away. The ride back to town was quiet, the wagon wheels creaking as Caleb guided the team along the moonlit road. Sophia was acutely aware of his presence beside her, of the subtle scent of soap and leather that seemed to follow him. "Ma and Ruth like you," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Pop, too, says you're the best bookkeeper the store's ever had," Sophia laughed softly. "High praise considering I'm the only bookkeeper the store has ever had," Caleb chuckled. "Fair point." He hesitated, then added, "There's a harvest dance next Saturday, whole town turns out for it." "Would you? That is, might you allow me to escort you?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Sophia felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't part of her plan. She had come west to marry Timothy Whitfield, to be a rancher's wife in New Mexico territory. Yet here she was, considering an invitation from a different man entirely, one she had come to respect and, if she was honest with herself, admire. "I would like that very much, Caleb," she said finally, her voice soft in the darkness. His smile was visible even in the dim light. "Good, that's good." The harvest dance was held in the town hall, a spacious building that served as meeting place, courthouse, and social center for Clearwater. Decorated with autumn leaves and bunting, lit by dozens of lanterns, it was transformed for the occasion. A small band played lively tunes, and tables laden with food lined one wall. Sophia wore her best dress, a deep green that brought out the amber flecks in her hazel eyes. Mrs. Abernathy had helped her arrange her hair in a more elaborate style than usual, secured with a borrowed comb. Caleb arrived precisely at 7, wearing a crisp white shirt and dark vest that made his shoulders look even broader. His hair was neatly combed, and he clutched his hat in his hands as Mrs. Abernathy ushered him into the parlor. "Miss Bennett will be down momentarily," the older woman said with a knowing smile. When Sophia descended the stairs, Caleb's expression made her heart flutter. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, his blue eyes wide with appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself," she replied, accepting his offered arm. The dance was everything a small town social should be: warm, lively, filled with laughter and conversation. Sophia was introduced to dozens of townspeople she hadn't yet met, all curious about the Eastern lady who had come to Clearwater under such unusual circumstances. She danced with several partners, but it was the dances with Caleb that left her breathless. He moved with the same easy grace he showed on horseback, guiding her through the steps with a gentle hand at her waist. When the band struck up a waltz and he held her closer than before, Sophia felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the crowded room. "You're a fine dancer, Caleb Morgan," she said as they twirled across the floor. "Had a good teacher." Ma insisted all her children learn properly, said it was a civilized accomplishment. He grinned. "Never thought I'd be grateful for those lessons until now." As the evening progressed, they stepped outside for a breath of air. The night was cool, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Lanterns hung from the porch of the town hall, casting a golden glow over the wooden boardwalk. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Caleb asked, offering Sophia his jacket when he noticed her shiver. "Very much," she replied, drawing the warm garment around her shoulders. It smelled of him, a comforting scent she was coming to associate with safety. "Thank you for inviting me." Caleb leaned against the railing, his expression thoughtful. "Sophia, there's something I've been meaning to tell you, about Timothy Whitfield." Sophia tensed. In the month since her arrival, she had pushed thoughts of her former fiancé aside, focusing instead on building her new life. "What about him? After I brought you to town that day, I made some inquiries, sent telegrams to contacts I have around the territory." Caleb's jaw tightened. Whitfield was known for this sort of thing. He'd place advertisements in Eastern papers, correspond with ladies, send them money to travel west, but he never intended to marry any of them. Sophia felt cold despite the jacket. "What do you mean?" He was running a scheme. Once the ladies arrived, they'd find themselves stranded, forced to seek whatever work they could. Some ended up in unsavory situations. Caleb's expression darkened. You weren't the first, Sophia, but from what I hear you might be the last. U.S. Marshal arrested Whitfield in Santa Fe last month on charges of mail fraud. The news should have devastated her, but instead, Sophia felt a curious sense of relief. It hadn't been her inadequacy that led to Timothy's absence that day at the Crossroads, it had been his own criminal nature. I see, she said quietly. Thank you for telling me. Caleb studied her face carefully. You're not upset, Sophia considered the question. I'm angry that he deceived me, of course, but mostly I'm grateful that fate intervened. If things had gone according to his plan, who knows what might have happened to me? She met Caleb's gaze steadily. Instead, I found Clearwater. I found honest work, good people. She hesitated, then added softly, I found you. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Caleb took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Sophia, I know you came west expecting a different life, a different man, but I've grown mighty fond of you these past months. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. I've grown fond of you too, Caleb. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I'm not a wealthy man. The ranch is doing well and the store provides a steady income, but it's not the grand life some might promise in fancy letters. I don't want fancy promises, Sophia interrupted. I want honesty. She faltered, suddenly shy. What do you want, Sophia? Caleb asked, his voice low. This, she whispered, rising on tiptoe to press her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Caleb's arms came around her, drawing her close against his chest. When they finally parted, both were breathing rapidly, faces flushed in the lantern light. Well, Caleb said, a slow smile spreading across his face. That was worth waiting for, Sophia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months, perhaps years. Indeed it was, Mr. Morgan. The sound of the band starting up again drifted through the open doors of the town hall. Caleb offered his arm with a formal bow that made Sophia smile. Shall we return to the dance, Miss Bennett? With pleasure, she replied, taking his arm and allowing him to lead her back inside. As autumn deepened into winter, Sophia and Caleb's courtship became the subject of good-natured gossip throughout Clearwater. They were often seen walking together after church, sharing meals at the hotel restaurant, or riding out to the ranch on clear days. Henry and Elizabeth Morgan made no secret of their approval, while Ruth teased her brother mercilessly about his improved grooming habits. December brought snow to the high country and a festive spirit to town. The mercantile was busier than ever, with customers seeking gifts and supplies for the holiday season. Sophia worked long hours alongside Caleb and his father, finding satisfaction in the steady growth of the business. On Christmas Eve, Caleb invited Sophia to join his family for dinner at the ranch. The house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, the smell of roasting turkey and fresh bread filling the air. Presents were exchanged: a hand-knitted scarf from Elizabeth, a leather-bound journal from Henry, a delicate hair comb from Ruth. Caleb's gift was last, a small package wrapped in brown paper and string. Inside, Sophia found a silver brooch in the shape of a rose, simple but beautifully crafted. It was my grandmother's, Caleb explained as Sophia admired it. Pop gave it to her the day they decided to settle here and build the ranch. It's lovely, Sophia said, touched by the family significance of the gift. Thank you. Later, as the family gathered around the piano to sing carols, Caleb drew Sophia aside. Bundle up, he whispered. I want to show you something. Curious, Sophia donned her coat, gloves, and bonnet. Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars brilliant against the black sky. Caleb led her to the barn where a sleigh waited, hitched to his sturdy bay gelding. A sleigh ride? Sophia asked, delighted. Just a short one, Caleb promised, helping her into the seat and tucking a thick buffalo robe around them both. The runners glided smoothly over the snow as they set off across the moonlit landscape. Sophia leaned against Caleb's shoulder, marveling at the peaceful beauty of the ranch in winter. He guided the horse up a gentle slope to a small rise overlooking the property. Below them, the ranch house glowed with lamplight, smoke curling from the chimney. Beyond lay the town of Clearwater, and further still, the shadowy outlines of mountains against the star-filled sky. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Caleb said, securing the reins and turning to face Sophia. "I come up here when I need to think, to remind myself of what matters." His expression was serious in the moonlight, his blue eyes reflecting the stars. "Sophia, when I found you at that crossroads, I had no idea how much you would come to mean to me. These past months have been the happiest of my life." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Mine too, Caleb." He took her gloved hands in his. "I know it hasn't been a year yet since you arrived, and maybe this is too soon. But I can't imagine my life without you in it now." With steady hands, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I'm not asking you to wait at any more crossroads, Sophia. I'm asking you to walk the same path with me for all our days." Opening the box revealed a simple gold band set with a small diamond that caught the moonlight and seemed to hold it, glittering. "Sophia Bennett, will you marry me?" The question hung in the frigid air, his breath forming a cloud between them. Sophia felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily robbed her of speech. This was nothing like the correspondence with Timothy, with its vague promises and distant dreams. This was real. Caleb was real, solid, and true as the ground beneath them. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Caleb Morgan, I will marry you." His face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger, even over her glove. Then he was kissing her, his arms strong around her, the cold forgotten in the warmth they created between them. When they finally returned to the house, cheeks flushed and eyes bright, the family took one look at them and erupted in congratulations. Elizabeth embraced Sophia with tears in her eyes, welcoming her as a daughter. Henry clapped his son on the back, his pride evident. Ruth danced around them both, already planning the details of the wedding. As Sophia lay in the guest room that night, she held her hand up to catch the moonlight on her ring. The journey that had begun with heartbreak at a lonely crossroads had led her here, to love and family, and a future brighter than any she could have imagined. The wedding was set for April, when the worst of winter would be past, and spring would be turning the prairie green again. The entire town became involved in the preparations, from the sewing of Sophia's dress, white silk ordered specially from Denver, to the planning of the feast that would follow the ceremony. Sophia continued working at the mercantile, though now she was learning the business as a future partner rather than an employee. Caleb divided his time between ranch work and helping his father expand the store, adding a new wing to accommodate the growing inventory. They spent their evenings planning their future together. Caleb was building an addition to the ranch house, a private wing for them, with a study for Sophia and views of the mountains she had come to love. "You should have your own space," he explained as they reviewed the plans one evening in late February. "A place for your books and papers." Sophia smiled, touched by his consideration. "And where will your space be?" "Wherever you are," he replied simply, earning himself a kiss that delayed their planning considerably. As the wedding day approached, Sophia received an unexpected letter. It was from her mother, responding at last to the news Sophia had sent months ago about Timothy's deception and her new life in Clearwater. The letter was stiff with reproach at first, lecturing Sophia on the foolishness of her Western adventure. But toward the end, her mother's tone softened. She expressed cautious approval of Sophia's engagement to a respectable businessman and rancher, and most surprisingly asked if there might be room in Colorado for a widow seeking a fresh start of her own. "She wants to come here," Caleb asked when Sophia shared the letter. "To Clearwater." "It appears so," Sophia said, uncertain how to feel about the prospect. Her relationship with her mother had been strained for years, especially after her father's death. "Though I cannot imagine her adapting to life here," Caleb considered this. "People can surprise you. Look how well you've taken to the West." He squeezed her hand. If you want her here, we'll make a place for her. If not, that's your choice too. His support meant everything. After careful thought, Sophia wrote back, inviting her mother to visit after the wedding. Whether the visit would become permanent remained to be seen, but it was a start, another crossroads, another choice. April arrived with soft rains and wildflowers dotting the prairie. On the morning of her wedding day, Sophia woke to sunshine streaming through her window at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house. Ruth and several ladies from town arrived early to help her prepare, bringing flowers and ribbons and excited chatter. The dress was everything Sophia had dreamed of, elegant without being ostentatious, with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was arranged in a crown of braids, with sprigs of baby's breath woven throughout. The silver rose brooch from Christmas was pinned at her throat, something old to complement something new. "You look beautiful," Ruth said, adjusting the veil. "Caleb won't know what hit him." The church was filled to capacity, decorated with early spring blooms and ribbons. As Sophia stood at the back, arm linked with Henry Morgan, who had offered to give her away, she felt a moment of déjà vu. Another wedding day, another white dress. But this time, there was no doubt, no fear of abandonment. Caleb would be waiting for her. The music began, and Sophia walked down the aisle, her eyes fixed on the tall figure at the altar. Caleb turned as she approached, and the naked emotion on his face brought tears to her eyes. This was real. This was true. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, and Sophia felt the rightness of it all settle in her bones. This was where she was meant to be. They spoke their vows clearly, their voices carrying through the hushed church. When Caleb placed the gold band on her finger, joining it with her engagement ring, Sophia felt the last piece of her heart fall into place. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Caleb's kiss was gentle but full of promise, sealing their commitment before God and community. As they turned to face the congregation, now introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, the applause was deafening. The celebration that followed at the town hall was the largest Clearwater had seen in years. Tables groaned under the weight of food: roast beef, ham, chicken, every vegetable that could be coaxed from early spring gardens or preserved from the previous harvest. The cake, a masterpiece created by Mrs. Holloway from the hotel, stood 3 tiers high, decorated with sugar flowers. There was dancing and laughter, toasts and tears. Henry Morgan spoke movingly of watching his son grow into a man worthy of such a bride. Elizabeth welcomed Sophia formally into the family, presenting her with a quilt that generations of Morgan women had contributed to. Even Mrs. Abernathy, usually so stern, dabbed at her eyes as she wished the couple well. As the evening progressed, Sophia found herself standing once again on the porch of the town hall, catching her breath after a lively reel. Caleb joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Happy, Mrs. Morgan?" he asked, the name still new and wonderful on his lips. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though I must admit I'm ready to be alone with my husband." Caleb's eyes darkened at her words. "That can be arranged," he murmured, brushing a kiss against her temple. They made their farewells shortly after, amidst good-natured teasing and well wishes. A carriage decorated with ribbons and flowers awaited them, ready to carry them to the ranch house, which would be theirs alone for the next 2 weeks while Henry, Elizabeth, and Ruth stayed in town. The journey seemed both endless and too short, the anticipation building with each mile. When they finally arrived, Caleb insisted on carrying Sophia across the threshold, setting her down gently in the parlor where a fire had been laid ready. "Welcome home, Sophia Morgan," he said, his voice husky with emotion. Their first night as husband and wife was everything Sophia had dreamed of: tender, passionate, a joining of bodies that mirrored the joining of their lives. In Caleb's arms, she found a belonging she had never known before, a completion that transcended the physical. The following days were a blissful discovery of married life. They rode the boundaries of the ranch together, Caleb pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his childhood. They prepared meals side by side in the kitchen, read by the fire in the evenings, and learned the rhythms of sharing a home and a bed. On their last day alone before the family returned, they rode to the crossroads where they had first met. It looked different now, less desolate somehow, with spring turning the landscape green and wildflowers dotting the prairie. Strange to think if I'd taken the northern route that day, we might never have met, Caleb said as they dismounted. Sophia touched the weathered sign that marked the junction. I used to believe in careful plans, in charting one's course precisely. Now I think there's something to be said for the unexpected turns. Caleb took her hand, bringing it to his lips. I'm mighty glad you were waiting at this crossroads, Sophia Bennett. And I'm mighty glad you rode down my path, Caleb Morgan, she replied, using the Western phrasing that had become more natural to her over the months. They stood there a moment longer, acknowledging the place where their stories had intersected, before mounting their horses and riding home together, side by side on the same road. In the years that followed, Clearwater prospered, and with it, the Morgan family. Sophia's mother did eventually move west, setting up residence in a small house in town, and to everyone's surprise, finding a place for herself in the community as the organizer of the town's first lending library. Morgan's Mercantile expanded to include a second location in the growing town of Riverton, 20 miles away. Sophia's business acumen proved invaluable as they navigated contracts with the railroad and new suppliers from as far away as San Francisco. The ranch flourished too, with Caleb implementing modern breeding practices that improved their stock. They hired more hands, built new outbuildings, and became known throughout the territory for the quality of their cattle. But their greatest joy came in the spring of 1878, when Sophia gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Emily, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's chestnut hair. She was followed 2 years later by Thomas, and in 1882 by twins Michael and Sarah. The house expanded along with the family, the original addition becoming just the first of several. The study Caleb had planned for Sophia became a favorite gathering place, lined with books and mementos of their life together. It was there, on quiet evenings after the children were asleep, that they would sometimes reminisce about their unlikely beginning. "Do you ever wonder about him?" Caleb asked once, as they sat before the fire on a winter night. "Whitfield, I mean." Sophia looked up from her embroidery, considering the question. "Occasionally," she admitted. "Not with regret, but with a sort of gratitude, oddly enough. His deception led me here, to you and the children, to this life." Caleb nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The Lord works in mysterious ways, as my mother would say. Indeed he does." Sophia set aside her sewing and moved to sit beside her husband on the sofa. "I received a letter from Virginia today. My cousin writes that a man claiming to be Timothy Whitfield has been advertising for a bride in the Richmond papers." Caleb frowned. "He was sentenced to 5 years, must have been released." "Apparently so. I've written to the marshal who arrested him, alerting him to this new scheme." Sophia leaned her head against Caleb's shoulder. "I would spare other women what might have been my fate." Caleb pressed a kiss to her hair. "That's one of the many reasons I love you, Sophia Morgan. Your heart is as beautiful as the rest of you." Outside, snow fell gently, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Inside, the fire crackled, casting warm light over the evidence of their shared life: children's toys, family portraits, books, and papers, the silver rose brooch resting on Sophia's desk. From a desperate wait at a lonely crossroads to this rich, full life, it was a journey neither of them could have predicted. Yet as Sophia looked at her husband, at the lines of laughter around his eyes and the steadfast love in his gaze, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true destination. "I love you, Caleb Morgan," she whispered, the words as fresh and true as the first time she had spoken them. "And I love you, Sophia Morgan," he replied, drawing her close. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come." In the spring of 1890, 15 years after their first meeting, Caleb and Sophia stood once again at the crossroads where their story had begun. This time they were not alone. Their 4 children, ranging in age from 12 to 18, clustered around them, curious about this seemingly ordinary spot that held such significance for their parents. "This is where Papa rescued Mama?" young Sarah asked, her blue eyes so like her father's wide with romantic notions. "He didn't exactly rescue me," Sophia corrected gently. "He offered assistance to a stranger, which is what any decent person would do. But you were wearing your wedding dress," Emily, their eldest, pointed out. At 18, she was a thoughtful young woman with her mother's intelligence and her father's steadfast nature. And waiting for another man who never came. Caleb's arm tightened around Sophia's waist. "Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected circumstances," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of their years together. Thomas, 16 and already showing signs of becoming a fine horseman like his father, kicked at the dirt with the toe of his boot. "I still think you should have tracked down that Whitfield fellow and taught him a lesson, Pa. Violence rarely solves anything, son," Caleb replied. "Besides, the law caught up with him eventually." Michael, Thomas's twin and the quietest of their children, had been examining the weathered sign that still marked the junction. "They're going to replace this soon," he observed. "The county commissioner was talking about it at the last town meeting. Said all the road markers need updating now that we're a proper state." Colorado had achieved statehood in 1876, just a year after Sophia and Caleb had met. The territory had grown and changed alongside their marriage, transforming from frontier to established communities with schools, churches, and expanding commerce. "Perhaps we should keep this one when they take it down," Sophia suggested. "As a memento." "A fine idea," Caleb agreed. "We could place it near the old oak where we have our family picnics." They had come to this spot deliberately, making a pilgrimage of sorts as part of their 15th anniversary celebration. The children had heard the story of their parents meeting countless times, but standing at the actual crossroads made the tale come alive in a new way. "It doesn't look very romantic," Sarah declared, clearly disappointed by the ordinary appearance of the place. Sophia laughed, exchanging an amused glance with Caleb. "Romance isn't always found in grand settings, sweetheart. Sometimes it's in the simple offer of water to a thirsty traveler or a kind word when it's most needed." "Your mother's right," Caleb added. "I didn't fall in love with her because of where we met, but because of who she was, brave enough to travel across the country on the strength of a promise, resilient enough to build a new life when that promise proved false." Emily sighed dreamily. "It's still a wonderful story." "Better than the novels Mrs. Preston lends from the lending library." "Real life usually is better than fiction," Sophia said, "though perhaps not as tidy. In novels, the story ends with the wedding. In life, that's just the beginning." As they mounted their horses to return to the ranch, Sophia took one last look at the crossroads. What had once been a place of despair and uncertainty was now simply another landmark in a life filled with love and purpose. The road ahead stretched clear and true, shared with the man who had ridden into her life when she needed him most. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Sophia and Caleb sat on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. The ranch was quiet except for the occasional lowing of cattle and the soft hooting of an owl in the distance. 15 years, Caleb mused, his fingers entwined with Sophia's. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday we met, and other times it seems we've always been together." "I know what you mean," Sophia agreed. "I can hardly remember my life before Clearwater, before you and the children." Caleb brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Any regrets, Mrs. Morgan?" Sophia turned to study her husband's face in the moonlight. At 40, Caleb was still handsome, though his blonde hair now showed strands of silver at the temples, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. To her, these changes only made him more attractive evidence of a life fully lived, of laughter and concern and all the emotions that had shaped their years together. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully. "You? Only that I didn't find you sooner," he said, his voice soft with feeling. From inside the house came the chiming of the grandfather clock Henry and Elizabeth had given them as a wedding present. 10 melodic notes marked the hour, a reminder of how precious time was, how quickly it passed. "I've been thinking," Caleb said after the last note faded. "Emily will likely marry in the next few years. Thomas and Michael talk of attending university in Denver. Sarah won't be far behind." Sophia nodded, feeling the bittersweetness of watching their children grow toward independence. "The house will seem very quiet." "Too quiet, maybe," Caleb suggested. "Which is why I've been corresponding with that orphanage in Denver, the one run by Sister Margaret." Sophia straightened, turning to face him fully. "Caleb Morgan, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" His smile was both hesitant and hopeful. "There are children who need homes, Sophia. Good homes with people who understand what it means to find family in unexpected places." He paused. "We're still young enough to raise another child or two, if you're willing." Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes, but they were tears of joy and amazement at this man who continued to surprise her after 15 years of marriage. "I would be more than willing," she whispered. "I would be honored to expand our family in such a way." Caleb's expression softened with relief and love. "I hoped you'd feel that way. Sister Margaret writes that there are twin girls just turned 5. Their parents died in a fever outbreak last winter." "Twins," Sophia echoed, thinking of Michael and Thomas, of the special bond they shared. "When can we meet them?" "I thought perhaps next month when we go to Denver for the livestock exposition." Caleb squeezed her hand. "Nothing needs to be decided immediately. We'll know if it's right when we meet them." Sophia leaned against her husband's strong shoulder, her heart full. From that long-ago day at the Crossroads to this moment of considering a new beginning for 2 orphan children, their journey had been one of continual growth and unexpected blessings. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Caleb asked, his arm coming around her shoulders. "For riding down my path that day, for seeing something in me worth knowing, for building this life with me step by step." Sophia tilted her face up to his. "For being the man you are, Caleb Morgan." His kiss was as tender as the first they had shared, yet deepened by years of knowing and being known. When they finally drew apart, the stars seemed brighter, the night air sweeter. "Happy anniversary, my love," Caleb murmured against her hair. "Happy anniversary," Sophia replied. "Here's to many more crossroads, many more paths discovered together." In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, the sound echoing across the land they had come to cherish. Inside the house they had built, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge of being loved. And on the horizon, unseen but certain, waited new adventures, new challenges, new joys to be shared. For Sophia and Caleb Morgan, the journey that had begun at a lonely crossroads continued onward, not as 2 separate trails, but as a single path stronger, truer, and infinitely more beautiful for being traveled together.